It's been said that ideas without action are just dreams. Coming up with ideas is great, but implementing them takes work and dedication. At some point in your lean journey, you and the team will be executing on such ideas aimed at fixing root causes. After all, that's the whole point of problem solving. And as a project leader or manager, you might be tempted to start by implementing one of the easier proposed solutions. But is this the right approach? Well, maybe, maybe not. Ask, will your customers approve of that decision? In other words, is that solution benefiting them somehow? Or is your objective to get the biggest bang for the company? How will you deploy your available resources? This is why prioritizing the proposed solutions is a critical part of continuous improvement. First, it helps to evaluate risk versus reward to manage your expected return of that solution. It allows you to make intelligent decisions using data, such as considering the time and effort required. And finally, prioritizing can break down a complex problem into smaller bite-sized chunks. This is the how do you eat an elephant argument. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of prioritizing your list of solutions. Suppose you and your team have been working to resolve a particular problem. You've narrowed the list of root causes. You then solicit ideas and have landed on, say, 2, maybe 3 very good solutions. Since your options are limited, you collectively agree on which one to do first, second, and third. You move on. But what if your team brainstorms a dozen, all very good, worthy ideas? Which ones do you tackle first so that you maximize your resources? This might be a dilemma since reality is you have a specific budget, a few available resources, and perhaps you are balancing other competing projects. We'll look at a tool called the Impact versus Effort Matrix, which can help to assess all solutions against just 2 variables: the impact each solution has on resolving the root cause versus how much effort is required to execute. This is where the Impact versus Effort Matrix comes in handy to visualize how each proposed solution compares to the others based on the 2 key variables: the impact of the solution or the overall effect that solution will have towards eliminating the root cause, and the effort or how much time, money, and personnel will be needed to accomplish the activity. This simple matrix can be applied to any group of solutions or ideas to estimate a rough assessment of how much work time will be required to yield some sort of benefit. If you search for this tool online in the internet, you will most often come across a 2x2 matrix that looks something like this. The impact is on the y-axis and the effort is on the x-axis. There will be 4 squares, 1 color-coded green, 2 yellow squares, and 1 red square. Ideas that fall into the green square are the highest priority, the yellows are medium, and the red are very low priority or might be completely discarded ideas. However, I would like to instead propose a banded matrix that looks like this. Notice it still has impact and effort on the y and x axis respectively. And we'll still use green, yellow, and red color codes. But notice the banded matrix has numbers on the sides and on the top. More on this later. But before I go into detail on the tool, I want to mention some advantages and disadvantages of the classic 2x2 matrix compared to the banded matrix. The 2x2 matrix is common. It's easy to use with a simple visual. However, it's just not very accurate. It's prone to bias and does not take into consideration any negative impact that solution might have towards resolving the root cause. Meaning, if the proposed solution goes against resolving the root cause, which results in more defects. The banded matrix is more objective, is more descriptive because it uses numbers to form a rating scale, making it slightly more effective with identifying prioritization. The disadvantages are it's more time consuming to fill out. The visuals are more complicated because it's broken down into smaller parts and uses a scale that must be defined by the team before using. Like its counterpart, this matrix does not consider any negative impacts. Now, that said, I will steer the team towards the banded matrix because it's a straightforward way to show management why your team decided to prioritize certain ideas over others. Let's discuss from here on out how to use the banded impact versus effort matrix. The very first step of using the banded matrix is to assess what impact any solution might have towards resolving the root cause. We must create a scale from 1 to 10, broken out into low, medium, and high impacts based on numerical ratings that we will define and agree as a team. I want to be clear, the team will define these ratings each time before using this tool. The numbers which I'm going to show here are not set in concrete. This is because each problem is unique, and therefore the impact towards eliminating the root cause is unique. So moving on, I will show an example of a typical rating scale. For a low impact of any solution towards eliminating the root cause, we will use the numbers 1 and 2, which mean the idea will have very little impact on the root cause, perhaps no more than a 20% reduction in defects or an improvement on the service metric. A medium impact will have a rating from 3 to 7, meaning that idea will have somewhat strong impact towards eliminating the defects, somewhere between 30% to 70% improvement. For a high impact, we will use the numbers from 8 to 10, meaning the proposed solution will fully address the root cause and we will see a huge reduction in defects of more than 80%. Again, this is only an example. Your team needs to define what is low, medium, and high impact for each problem statement. Next, we'll use a similar low, medium, and high scale for the amount of effort required to implement any of the proposed ideas. Let's define effort as the amount of time, funding, and people necessary to execute an idea. For low effort, we will use the numbers 1 to 3, representing the amount of effort would be fairly short, say less than 2 months, costing less than $50,000, and we can execute the idea just with the members of our own team. Medium effort will be from 4 to 8 scale, which requires more effort. Say it will take us under 1 year, but will cost us under $200,000, and we'll need to call in reinforcements from outside of our team to get it done. A high amount of effort will be a 9 or a 10 on the scale. It will take us more than 1 year to implement the idea, and we might have to use investment capital funding, and certainly we'll need to use external resources like an outside engineering firm or a contractor. Again, I wish to stress that this is an example of a scale. Each team will need to define this scale for each project because one problem might not necessarily be the same as another problem. Next, you will ask your team to give a rating for each proposed solution based on the impact and effort. If you have 12 ideas, then each of the 12 ideas will get a number for impact towards eliminating the root cause and the number for effort to execute the proposed idea. For example, idea number 1 could be a 5 for impact, but 2 on effort. Idea number 2 could be an 8 on impact, but a 10 for effort, and so on. Next, you will plot each of the ideas on the banded matrix on the scales. Let's go back to the example where idea number 1 was a 5 for impact and a 2 for effort. We would then go up 5 squares on the impact scale and then move 2 squares on the effort scale, and we will write idea number 1 inside the box. We will do this for every one of the ideas. When you have finished, the banded matrix will have numbers inside the squares of the matrix. Some will fall into the green area, others will be inside the yellow band, and others will fall in the red band. This now gives us a good visual of which ideas we should prioritize, with the green area being the low-hanging fruit, which we should prioritize first because we'll get the highest impact with the lowest amount of effort. Ideas Ideas inside the yellow band are also strong, so we should work on a plan to work on these solutions next. The impact might not be as great, but without much effort, we can gain some incremental benefits. Ideas inside the red band have two potential prioritizations. The ideas with high impact are known as high risk, high reward ideas, which can still be viable, but will require more careful planning and perhaps can be transferred over to a dedicated project manager with its own budget and sponsor, because these could still yield very, very good results in the long term. Low impact but high effort ideas might not be worthwhile implementing, so careful consideration should be given if resources are scarce and the solution will have minimum impact. In other words, there might be other better and bigger fish to fry. Just keep in mind that for this tool, the red band does not mean stop or do not work on this further. It simply means the proposed solution requires careful investigation because of the potential downside versus its upside. Let's review the process for using the impact versus effort matrix. This is a great tool to help narrow the list of ideas from many down to the vital few potential solutions. First, you'll gather your team, hold a brainstorming session to generate as many ideas as possible. If you can muster only one or two ideas, then that's it, you're done. You can vote or agree as a team and then go execute on those ideas. But if you end up with too many really good ideas, then the impact versus effort matrix comes in very handy. For each idea, you will assess its impact towards the root cause by using a 1 to 10 scale. For each idea, you will assess how much effort, time, money, personnel will be needed to implement using, again, a 1 to 10 scale. Just remember to define what the impact and the effort scale represent for each problem. Don't just go using the prior scale without first making sure that it makes sense for this new problem. You will plot the results in the matrix and then concur on the priorities. Green zone ideas are excellent candidates to start, followed by the ideas that fall into the yellow band, and last should be the ideas within the red band. To summarize, if you only have a handful of ideas at your disposal, don't overthink it. These are just the ones that you can begin to prioritize, perhaps by voting or some other method. But if you have way too many ideas and you can't figure out a way to prioritize, use the banded impact versus effort matrix. This tool is a great way to make informed decisions and get you to take action.